Welcome, everyone, to episode number 256 of Pro NoCoders Office Hours. I'm your host, Tanya. I'm here with our member, John. We're going to get started in just a moment. This is your first time tuning in to Pro NoCoders Office Hours. We do this 6 times per week. We host a Zoom session, and our developer members come onto Zoom and they can ask us any bubble questions they want, and we do our best to get them answered. We can't always promise to have the answers because nobody has all of the answers, but we do our best and we get it right most of the time. And most of all, we promise you won't suffer alone. So welcome, John. I hear you have some questions this morning. Let's get started.
Okay, so I'm just finding my unmute button.
Oh, no worries. I do that all the time. Come on. It's like...
Right, let me share my screen. Are you okay for me to share my screen?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so where do we start? So let's come out here a minute. Let's start with this, I think. So move you guys out of the way. So I have a few questions because I'm now starting to tweak. So I need to log in. Hold on a minute.
I just love watching what people do with Bubble. It's amazing. Your app is no exception. It's just like, what? You can do this with Bubble? That's crazy. That's awesome.
Right. So I've got, I don't know if you probably will know him, actually. I've been speaking to Jared Gibb quite a bit on the forums, and he's helping me out. You know, the perennial problem I have about the way the keys come back from the API and having to do first and last and all that nonsense. So I was chatting to Jared today, and because the virtual database thing doesn't do what I need, unfortunately. So I've reached out to Jared, who's helped me with something else in the butt, and he's building me a custom plugin that will deal with this problem and give me the data back. So once I get that back from him, which will be Friday, this should hopefully solve the fundamental issue I have with that. So now I'm starting to crack on with polishing some of the other parts. So first question is a simple one. This here, which is the properties which come from the Google Search Console API, is just a drop down. It's not very intuitive as to how it's working. So it works fine. So I can go in and I can change it and say, so let me start from the beginning. It's not showing the correct website. So it's showing me here that you would think that that tick means that is the website I'm looking at, but it isn't. I'm actually looking at this website here. And when I set it, so let's say I change it to this one, which won't do anything because it'll be the same website, that works. So it's now telling me which website I'm in. So what I really need to do is sort of get rid of that initial piece showing the wrong website. Let me just deal with it. Can you hear my dog trying to kick the door in?
I can. It's okay. I totally get it. My cats try to break into my office all the time.
Come and say hello. He'll wander in and then he'll wander straight out again. He just wants to know what's going on.
Oh, yes.
You want to see George while we're doing that?
Yes, of course. We love dogs around here.
See George.
Hi, George.
It's George in his bed.
Oh, he's very cute.
He has his moments. He's getting on a bit now. He's 14 years old, so he's getting a bit old and deavery, aren't you, George?
We've got 2 like 5 or 6 week old kittens coming to stay with us today. So I'm excited. We've never fostered 2 at the same time, so but we'll see how it goes.
So if I reload this so you can see it in its native state. So it's this bit. So when it's here, I just want it to default to the right property and not. So now you see it's actually ticked to the right one. So why when it first loads and you've not done anything, why it tips to completely the wrong website? I have no idea.
Yeah, let's go to that in the editor. the drop down in the editor.
And it is in as a, what do you call it, reusable. So
good idea.
Well, yeah, it is, except for the fact it seems to.
We like reusables around here.
Right, so that's what's going on here. And then there is a.
Oh, I see. You have a circular. You have a circular default value.
Yeah,
so your default value.
It is giving me an error message down here, of which I have two, but this circular reference evaluated to the initial content. So yes, so there's something going wrong.
Right. So if you go back to the editor, I can show you what it is. It's that default value. So there, that's referring to itself. So you need to clear that out, and you need to reference this specific site. Like, how else would you know which site's information is below? Like, where else are you storing that the domain name or the property name?
Good question. I think it's going to be as simple as this, I think.
That would also be circular. So it's what you're doing is you're loading that first property. So how are you populating the information on the page? Because that page is showing the specific properties information. So how do you know which property it is to display that information below? Like, what kind of expression are you using on the page to get the right property?
So it's coming from the Google Search Console API, which is this.
Okay, so is it the first choice, or is it
I don't know. I presume that what it's doing, let's put this in here. I assume that's what it's doing is.
And so maybe first item?
Yeah, I think what it's probably doing is whatever the default is in the API connector. So what I might do is play with it, because I haven't tested changing the default website to see if that changes, because obviously when a real user's there, that default website won't apply to them at all. So let's see what this gives me. Okay, so that's defaulted to Pro Copy Tips, but
is that's not what's being shown on the page, right?
No, it's showing me Neural Candy, but we might need to wait a minute, because this might load a different set, because I've been, without going in, I've been playing with the date ranges to see how slow the API response is to if I increase the number of days. So instead of showing 30 days and limiting it to 1,000 records from the API, I've been playing with making it 60 days and 25,000 records. So that's causing this here to take quite a while to load, but I think it would have loaded by now. So yes, so that is showing me the first one, which makes sense, but it's not actually the one that's displaying. The one that's displaying is the default in my API call.
So if you go to the go to any either the chart or the repeating group, let's look at the data source there.
So if we go here as an example.
So list shifters, shifted. Okay.
This, so this is where it's saying which site to use.
Right. So we want to.
This is a state that's set in the back end that Pablo did for me last time we were on. Okay.
Got it. So so that's a state on the page? Or no, that's a state on the header.
Yeah, in the reusable element. Yeah.
Okay, so then let's copy that expression.
Yep.
And then let's go back to that drop down in the reusable.
Yeah.
And then let's paste that in the default value. And then, so just click where it says missing element and say header. It's not in there. So that state is not being placed on the reusable. It's being placed on something else.
Right.
So let's.
I think that was in here. Here.
When we set that state, let's also set a state on the header with the same information.
Okay.
So if you just click to add an action, element action set state, then set the state of that reusable, the floating group header. Oh, you are in the floating group header. Drop downs value site URL. Oh no, this is what, okay. So this is where you're setting the state of the floating group header for the filtering on the page. What we want to do is and that's when you change the value.
Yeah.
Right? So what we want to do is when the page loads, there's a state saying header something that is determining which site is getting loaded.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to communicate that back to the reusable. Now, reusables have access to their own states and they have access to the URL parameters, but they do not have access to states that are placed on the page.
Yeah.
Right? So we need to go ahead and delete the step 2 and then go back to the page.
The page that is the one that's so
this test list shifter. Yep.
I will call it something other than test lift shifter at some point.
It's okay. Yeah, you'll name it when you're ready. You have to be the places you have to be careful about renaming things is I don't. I think I've run into problems when you rename a reusable on the page. You can like rename it just for that page, and then it makes it hard to find that reusable. And then the other place that you don't do name changes is parameters in the back end, because then it breaks everything when you change the names.
Yeah.
Okay, so now what we want to find is where that, go ahead and click so go back to that repeating group. We need to find where that state is that the list shifter is using. So the repeating group, yep. So that headers GSC properties, where is that coming from? Like,
so I assume it is coming from that custom state that we were just looking at, isn't it?
Well, did you rename the reusable headers? Because when we were trying to find that custom state on the reusable, we couldn't find it. So did you rename the reusable on the page?
No.
Okay, so just right click, go back to, yeah, it looks like you might have, because the reusable itself was called a floating group header. Right? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I wonder if it's though to do with, is it this, if I go into here, because it's like a element within a, so it's that, isn't it?
No, probably not. If you just click outside of everything, just on the gray, and then click the information, click the I. Yeah, so that's where it is. It is on that floating group. Okay, so now where are we setting that custom state? Do you know on page load where your set is? It's probably in the workflows of the page, right?
I don't know. See, I thought it was this.
That's only when you change the property.
Right.
When you change the drop down. So probably on, you might want to duplicate the page and then open up the test list shifter in one tab and keep this one open in the other tab. So if you just
Run that by me again.
if you go up to the top to the tab and duplicate the tab, that way you can keep this reusable open in one tab, and you can open the page, the list shifter page, in another tab. So test list.
Oh, sorry.
I just need to keep two windows of bubble open so you don't have to keep navigating back and forth.
Got you. Yeah. Right. Okay, and then set this one to test list shifter.
Exactly.
Okay.
So on pages loaded, the very first workflow, we set you're setting it on, you're setting states, but you're setting them on the page.
Yeah, and that's for this is for something else. Although that is something to do with it, isn't it?
It does. Google Search Console headers, GSC properties, but when are you setting the... Okay, flip back to the other tab. Users logged in. Go into the very first one and go into the second one. All right. Go see where it says when GSC header filters is clicked. All right, there's nothing there.
Get rid of that.
Okay, let's use the app search tool. It's the magnifying glass next to development over on the top right. Search by action and set an element state.
Set state of an element.
Yep, that's it. And then just click search only on the current page. And then go ahead and click search. I find the contains text doesn't work very well. So click there, and I think that is under drop down. Yep, so that's the one that we already knew about, but that's only setting it when it's changed.
Mm-hmm.
So then let's flip to the other tab and then do the same thing.
What was it again?
Action type.
Yeah.
Set state. Oh, it's gonna, yeah, you can just click it again. So it's a little tricky, but we can go one by one. We're just looking for anywhere else that state is set.
No.
No. No.
No.
No.
No. No. No, that's all my sorting things.
Yeah. Well, John, you're making a very good case for hidden variables instead of states. Let's see here. Okay, so I guess the thing to do is when the page is loaded, when the page is loaded, we want to go ahead and set the state of that reusable. So on the page, you're calling that reusable header. So the element that you're going to set the state on will be header.
Yeah.
And then the custom state is GSC properties. And then you're going to set the value to something specific. I don't know how you're getting, like, I guess this would be a get data from external API.
Yes. I'm just thinking how that's going to work, because that works for
because your step one actually is referring to this state that you're setting here. I don't know how that state is getting set to begin with. So I don't know if
I don't know whether it is. So I think why we can't find it, let's come out here a minute. Well, let's do it in the other window so we don't lose it. I think what might be going on is in here, when you first set up that here, so this get props is the call that is, he says,
well, it's not showing the whole thing. It should be okay.
I think that just goes off and gets all the websites. And I think what's going on is that every time I make a call in the console, I have to have a default site URL, which is this one, which is the one that by default is loading for me in terms of that's the data it displays. So I wonder if it's not setting a state at all in terms of it's just using this default value.
Right. And that's fine, but that's going to be different for every user, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
They won't have a default in here.
Right. So
Probably,
what happens when we send it in empty? We don't get anything back?
Yeah, you have to have this populated, yeah.
So then how are they going to populate that? Where are you making the call then? I guess the call is being made from...
So it'll come from this get prop. So this has to be populated in order for me to be able to initialize the
gotcha
thing. But obviously from a site perspective, then this get props, what happens is in wherever it is, I basically make a call. Let's go back here a minute. Here is basically get props. So this is going off and saying, right, give me all of the websites that belong to this account. And I think what I'm starting to get my head around is I think that I'm going to have to set the, let's call it the default value, but the default value from the front end is probably going to have to be back to this, just use the first property in that list or something like that. I think that's
right. Exactly. Yep. That's what we need in that default value. Yep. And then we also need to set the state, not just when you change the value of that, but on the page load, because that's how you're going to make the two things synced up.
Yeah. So I think if we go back to this and make the default value back to this.
Yep. And the first item.
Paste it and make it the first item, and then that will always load. So I wonder if that will actually do it.
And then copy that expression.
Okay.
If you...
Yeah.
And then we want to set on page load, and I don't think it matters if you do this on the page or on the reusable, but on page load, you want to set that state there.
So
just right click and paste. Google Search Console, get prop site. entry first item. So it's
because it's trying to call it from the reusable.
Oh, so let's set the state to the value of the, yeah, let's do this in the reusable instead.
Okay, let me delete that.
And just click to add an event. General page is loaded. Yep.
Is that
Yep,
right?
floating group header. That's right. And GSC properties, and then right click and paste and see if that'll. Nope, it doesn't like it. So state.
It has got that. Okay, so let's do that.
Site URL.
That
there you go.
Sense, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yep. Go back to the drop down.
In the
go
editor.
to design. If you go to the design.
Yep.
And find the drop down. First default by, yeah, okay, so that works.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So let's give that a whirl. That was a lot more complicated than I thought.
So, nope.
Now that is, yeah, no, this will be the delay. So give it 3 hours and this will pop up. I can tell by the numbers here that is using this website here.
Oh, okay.
Because this website here, Pro Copy Tips, has got way more. Yeah, see, that's fine. This is just because I'm messing around testing how much data I can fetch from the API.
Got it.
I've already tested this. It takes about 5 minutes for this to actually sort itself out. So I need to go back and change the, don't worry, I'm all right with that bit, but I know it's that side.
No worries. Awesome.
So that's cool. Okay, that's working. That's great. So next question is, given I seem to have you to myself, which is great. Let me have a think. What was the next question? There you go. So it's now updated.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So
we just need like a need like a loading.
Well,
message.
I'm going to change it because what's going on is because I'm playing with how far back a user can go, and this comes to my next question. So I wasn't going to let the user change what time period they're looking at, but I've decided that probably isn't great from their perspective. So I was going to hard code it to be 30 days compared to the previous 30 days. But what I'm going to let them do is do this last 7 days, last 28, last 2 months, last 3 months. Now, when you've got a large website like this one here is fairly large because it gets quite a lot of impressions and stuff, that brings back for 2 months 9,856 rows for 2 months. Now in the API, I can limit this. In the API, I can say bring back a maximum of 5,000 or 1,000 or whatever it is I want, and that will speed this up. So I'll still let them select this range, but I'll cut it off. And because it does it by clicks descending, it's fine, because what the user won't see is stuff that's got a small number of clicks, which they probably won't be that interested in the first place. So I think that's how I plan to do it. Well, that's what I'm planning on testing anyway. Sure. So that leads me neatly to the next question, which is, and it's kind of similar to this. So ignore this date range, because I was going to do it this way, where you get a nice fancy calendar and you can pick different dates and all that sort of stuff. I decided that's unnecessarily complicated. So I'm going to, well, I think it is anyway. I'm just going to let them do this, which mirrors pretty much how Google Search Console itself works. You can just pick 7 days, 28 days, 2 months, 3 months. So what I want to do is let the user select one of these. So default to 7 probably for load times. Say I want to select 28. It needs to sort of, obviously I need some way of taking this value and converting it to a number. So last 7 days should just be 7 days. Last 28 days should just be 28. 2 months, etc., etc. And then I need to feed that in various places. But for example, here where you've got the dates showing, I need to do a bit of wizardry in terms of maths to go in. Let me show you and say, so here you see you've got test list to the latest date. So that will always be the same. So that's fine, because that's getting what's the most recent data available in Google Search Console. So that will stay as it is. And then I would need to say, if they say 7 days as an example, I would need to change this maths to basically say, right, take the latest date available and then take away from that 7 days.
Got it. So I think your drop down should be from an option set. Is it already an option set?
No, I've literally just
typed it in.
Exactly.
Yep. So let's go to option sets in your data tab. Yep. And option set, and then whatever makes sense, but I would put OS at the back of it so you can know it's an option set. I would put the parentheses OS.
Like you did on the other one, because this
exactly.
is yeah. Okay.
Yep, perfect. And then the options, put in each of your 4 options.
Okay.
The way that you want them to read.
I think they were last 7 days, last 28, last 2 months, right? Last 28 days.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Yep.
And then create a new attribute where it says create a new attribute and call it days and make it a number. And go ahead and create that. And now for modify the attribute for 7 days, the last 7 days, the first one where it says modify attribute, and you'll put 7 and so forth.
Oh, I didn't know you could do this. Right, okay. So now, okay, so I take it I can't do current date time type stuff in here. So 2 months is going to have to be effectively 60, is it, rather than literally the last 2 calendar months? Is that right?
Well, no, we could do this as
doesn't massively matter. I'm just
so actually if you want to do it that way, we can do it. We just need another attribute. So okay. So go ahead and save out of here or cancel. And then I would change the name of the attribute that you just made. Go and change that name, and that one will be just call it number. You don't need to call it days anymore.
Yeah.
And then add a new attribute and call it frequency. And then we can say, how would I do this? I would say frequency would be probably either a text or another option set. So let's just do text.
Okay.
And then let's go ahead and create that. And then let's modify the attributes for last 7. And so the number is going to be 7, but the frequency will be days. And then we'll do the same for 28 and make it days. And then last 2 months, we'll do 2 and then months.
Yeah, I think this is probably logically more sensible than just doing 60 days, because that isn't quite right, is it?
Right. Gotcha. All right, so now we have to make sure we can do this conditionally. So what we want to do is go back to the drop down, and we're going to change the choices of the drop down.
Yeah.
And so instead of having static choices, it'll be dynamic. And then you're going to do the types of choices will be that OS you just made, the date range OS. Yep. And then choices source will be all choices. So just click in there, clear it. Yep. And then the current options display. So instead of null, you display. Yep. And then the default value will be probably the 7 days. Is that what you wanted to be as default?
Yeah, may as well, because that will be the least impactful in terms of the API.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Awesome. So now they can choose the choices, but now we have to go to one of the places where you're going to use this dynamic choice in order to change what the API is looking for.
Okay. So let's do it here, because this is probably the easiest one. So
the test list shifter's latest GSC date.
Yeah, which is right, because that's this, which is what's the most recent date that is available from the API. So then it's this that needs to come out.
Okay.
If I can bloody delete it. Days, yeah.
Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to grab that number. So I would put arbitrary text, maybe type arbitrary text.
Well, because I can't grab this because it's a reusable. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, well, we'll have to refer to a state. So arbitrary text, and we'll create the state as we go. So arbitrary text, and then we'll put in here headers, just insert dynamic data. Header, and then create a new state, which will be date range, I guess. State type is going to be a number. Yep. And then we'll go back into arbitrary text. So header. Oh, I guess we need to go back into the header to create that custom state. So just flip back into the reusable. You can actually do it right on the reusable. Just click outside of everything. Yeah. So just click on the eye in the inspector.
Just wondering whether it makes more sense, because where did Pablo do it on floating header or whatever it was called? Anyway, doesn't really matter. Right, group top bar. Yep.
Yep. Nope, not group top bar. Sorry, I'm on the reusable itself. So just click in the gray section around the header, like go down an inch. Go down, outside of the white part.
Oh, right.
All the way. There
okay.
You go. Yeah, on the reusable element itself.
Yes, that's where the other one is. Yeah, okay.
Yep, and then add a new custom state and make it date range. And the state type will be a number.
Yeah.
And then now that we have that, that's fine. We don't need to do anything else. We can flip back to the page for now.
back to test list shifter.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, and then go back to where we were working on that. So click into arbitrary text again. Okay, so headers, date, range, and then what we want to go ahead and click on date range there where it says date range, and then click more. Nope, click more behind it.
Yeah.
And then we want to multiply that by -1 because you want it to be a negative number, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then go ahead and close that. And then you want to convert that to a number down at the bottom. Converted to number. There you go. So that should work in terms of test. Yeah, that gives you your minus whichever you choose for the days. So that's when you're doing the first two choices. But now we need a conditional on there.
Okay. That's actually okay.
Well, we haven't set the state yet.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So now if you go to the conditional here, just go up a little to the conditional. So now we're going to need, let's go to flip back to the reusable. This is why I use tabs so you don't have to keep going, loading them. But because we need another state, so just click in the gray area, open up the states. Now we need a frequency state or a date range frequency. And the state type will be text. And then go back to the page, to the test list shifter page. And into the conditional of that expression. So the conditional is when header, type header. When header's date range frequency is months. Just type months. Well, I think you capitalized it in your option set.
No.
No. It's text, so you're just going to type it out. You're not looking for it in the option.
Right, sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
It's tricky. I think that Bubble tries to be consistent about things when it comes to text and dynamic data, but sometimes they miss the mark a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, and so go ahead and click out of there and set the property to change when true. And the thing you're going to change is the text. And then you can copy from the appearance section, you can copy the expression that went into the text to begin with. And then paste that. And now what you want to do is you want to change the days part of that expression to months. Where it says plus days, you want to change it to plus months. There you go. Are you following what we're doing?
Yeah, I think so. That makes sense. So your -1 is going to be 1 month.
Exactly. So now what we need to do is we need to set the two, we need to, on page load, we need to set those two states, and on the change of the date range drop down, we need to change those two states. So we need to go back to the reusable again.
Yep.
Actually, we need to go in the workflows. So when the page is loaded, go ahead and, yep, that one. And then just set another state. And the custom state will be the date range. And we're going to default to 7. This date range is going to be, yeah, we can just go ahead and default it to the number 7. Or you could get an option instead if you wanted to make it dynamic. I'm thinking, right? I mean, might as well. So just go ahead and click there and click get an option. It'll be date range. And then the option is going to be the last 7. And then click where it says more and you want the number.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you can right click and copy that expression.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
And then set another state, and it's going to be the frequency. And then paste. And then instead of number, you're going to want to choose the frequency.
Okay.
And then now I guess to make it, okay, so now when that drop down is changed, we need to, so see where it says when drop down GSC properties value is changed, it's the first one on the second row of your workflows.
First one
to the left.
Right. Yeah, right.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. So just right click and you can copy and paste that that workflow.
Okay.
Nope, not that, not the action, the workflow.
That.
Yep.
Yep.
And just right click and paste. And then you want to change the element is going to be the drop down for the frequency instead. Nope, go back to the workflow. And up at the top, you want to change the element to be the date range. And then go to step 1. And you don't want to change that first custom state. So change the custom state that you're changing is the custom state, not the element. So nope, you're fine where you are. Yeah, the second one down where it says GSC properties, you want to change the date range.
Yeah.
And then I think you still have that other one. So clear that out and then paste the expression you already have saved. Nope, I was wrong. Clear that out. And you're going to say the value is going to be this drop downs, values, number, and then set another state. And it's going to be the date range frequency. And you can copy and paste that other one or this drop downs values, and then you want its frequency.
Okay.
And then last bit, hang on, just let me think through this really quickly. All right. Trying to think if there's any way. I don't think there is. I think that should work as long as we spell days correctly and months correctly in both places. I think we should be good. You want to test?
Yeah. Interested to see if the API is still alive, but yeah, it is. Okay. Right. So let's. That's interesting. Why is that not working?
Oh, it's frozen. It's just looks like the page is frozen. Yeah.
I wonder if this is erroring because we have, okay, yeah, because we've only changed it here. I need to do the same logic we've done here in some of these other bits. So it's doing still fetching 60 days worth of data.
Exactly.
Okay. Got you.
Yep. And then if you can, I want to just see if you change the drop down, the last 7 days drop down, if it changes those dates.
Yeah.
Like it's supposed to.
When this changes, then we know we're winning.
Okay, got it.
There we go. Right. So if I change it to 28, then this here should change.
Yep, that's what we want.
It does. Okay. That looks promising. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, cool. Right. So I can then redo this. Right. Okay, that's cool. Great. Oh, it's a good job I had you to myself again, isn't it? That was, I always think these things are quite straightforward. And then when we go through them, like, blimey, there's a lot more steps to this than I thought.
Well, that's the trade-off with Bubble. You have so much flexibility.
Yeah.
But that makes things a lot more complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I got to introduce you to some of the power of option sets.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. No, it's very clever how, I think there's some things where I'm like really surprised how much you can do with it. And then there's other things which seem really frustrating as to what you can't do with it. The way you can't do, well, you can't easily do custom CSS, as we were looking at the other day. That's a bit clunky because I'm used to WordPress. So in WordPress, you can go in and you can easily add CSS and do what you want. It's not great at that. And then this business that I've been struggling with here, where you can't sort of get in the way of that API connector and sort of say, oh, hang on, before you pass the results of this JSON, I want you to do this with it, which you just can't do. Things like that are a bit frustrating, but hopefully so
that, I think that's it's interesting because you're working with a lot of data and you are wanting to manipulate a lot of data. So I think I mentioned this before. I think eventually you'll refactor off of Bubble's database for what you're trying to do.
I'm avoiding the database almost entirely because I'm hardly storing any data in the database. So none of
right.
And it would be a lot easier, but even without the latest discussion about pricing, it would still be quite a lot of data I'd be storing per user. So I've sort of tried to avoid it right from day one, even before the pricing debate happened, because I don't really, because the trouble is if I store it in the database, at the moment, what I can do with the API is I can say, right, just give me 30 days worth of data. And it basically summarizes that. So it doesn't actually give me it by day. It just says, here's the stats for the last 30 days. Whereas if I were to write the data to the database, what I'd probably end up doing is have to say, and this is how some of the competitors do it, they go out and they get each day's worth of data from Google for the last N days, weeks, months, and they store that. And that is, I checked it on my ProCopy Tips website, and it was something like for 3 months, it was well over 500,000 rows of data. So that's just one property for one user.
Right. And I think with I think back endless used to limit the entries in the database, and I think they moved away from that model. And I think Xano also moved away from that model because I think they realized that the power, the thing that people are paying for isn't, like, the storage costs would be prohibitive compared to just storing data in rows in a database on AWS. So what they really need to be charging for is their processing power and their ability to do the API stuff. So the thing that I think you'll be attracted to in the future, like right now, not storing anything in the database and just getting the data from the API makes sense, except in the future, you're going to realize that you're making the same exact API calls and you're getting back the exact set of data, just plus some data.
Yeah.
Right. So it's going to make more sense to cache a lot of it so that you're just getting the changed data, and it'll make your site a lot faster for users.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to hit some challenges if I ever want to do automatic alerting. So what I'd like to do in the future is send an email saying, oh, you've got 7 keywords that have moved up in rank in the last week, for example. And because I'm doing everything in the front end, it's relying on the user to do stuff to
right. And
I'm going to hit that problem.
And it's just going to be like in Xano, like I'm not a Xano expert, I'm working on it, but Eli has shown me like you make a function stack and you add a task and the task goes and it checks things on a regular basis for you. You just set it on a timer and it just runs. And then you can set up those webhooks back into Bubble to kick off those alerts and things like that.
Yeah, so. No, I agree. I think that's where I'll end up. But I think for an MVP to see if...
No, I think this is great for MVP, for sure.
It'll work. And once I get a few people paying for it, then I can have a look at that. Because it won't be that expensive. I mean, the development might be a bit, but the actual cost of running Xano, like you say, I don't think will be that significant.
I mean, their starter plan is really, really reasonable. It's like $70 per month, or $60 or $70 per month.
Yeah.
And it's just so much more powerful in terms of, well, like just parsing the JSON, which is what you're wanting to do in Bubble, and you're like having to get a custom plugin made for it, right? That's just,
No, I agree. I think definitely. On the subject of future-proofing, because we've got a couple of minutes. I was thinking about this today. So I'm quite familiar with WordPress. I'm all right with WordPress. Having read the forum, a lot of people are telling me that Bubble's not great from a SEO type perspective and sort of page load speeds and things like that. So what I'm toying with is changing this so that the domain is not the SEO console and making it a subdomain. So this logged in version would be app.the console as an example. And then go on.
That since you are so familiar with WordPress and getting ranked and how that all would work, that's probably the easiest route to success for you is to just do what you know for SEO and have your app put on the app subdomain like you're talking about. That's absolutely what I would recommend. I think that Bubble has said finally that they are taking SEO into consideration. They for a long time just kind of like procrastinated that. But now they are. So they're working on page load speeds because obviously Google loves a fast loading site. But still, Bubble is for apps, not for static web pages, right? And there's always going to be a big difference, I think. There's always going to be a big difference in terms of page load speed. I do think that if you are running dynamic data using Bubble, there are some options for getting it indexed, right? Which would have to do with submitting your sitemap and making sure there's a page that Google can crawl to find all of the dynamically created pages.
Yeah. Right? So see, I'm thinking with WordPress, I don't need to worry about any of that because Google won't be able to crawl app.seo console anyway because you have to be logged in. So if I use WordPress to put all the public pages, then I don't need to mess about with any of that in.
Nope. And then a lot of people who don't know WordPress are gravitating toward Webflow.
Yeah. I do know Webflow.
But if you know, I mean, if you know WordPress, the fastest way to success is just to do what you know. If you weren't already good at that, then I would say maybe go with Webflow because I hear so many good things about it. I was a WordPress nut for years. I did my SEO stuff on WordPress, so I'd probably be in the same boat. It would be faster and easier for me to get something off the ground SEO wise with WordPress than Webflow.
And I don't need to handle sort of thinking out loud. I don't need to handle any sort of authentication. I just have a login and register button on WordPress, and that would just take you to this subdomain to log in and register. And then I just make the home page up here come out. But presume if I say this took me outside of Bubble and to a WordPress, it would maintain my logged in state for however long that state lasts within Bubble.
So you wouldn't, the tricky thing would be to I don't think you, without some work, and I wouldn't know how to do it off the top of my head, and I've had clients ask for this and there wasn't an easy answer, but when they arrive on your main domain but they're already logged into the app, getting them to the app logged in is tricky. But once they click that login button, it doesn't have to take them to the login page. If they're already logged in, it can take them wherever you want.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, well, I'll worry about that later, but I'll get this working first and then go from there. Okay, so I will change this to be subdomain, and then that's ready to go then, isn't it? I should have done that from the start, really, but I've only just sort of thought it through. Cool.
It's a common solution.
Yeah, good.
Awesome.
I think I've used the whole hour on my own, which is the first, I think.
That's awesome. Perfect. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up office hours for today. We'll move into after hours and see if John has anything he didn't want to show on camera and broadcast to the rest of the world. We would love it if you would consider joining Pro NoCoders. You can go to our site at pronocoders.com. You can have a look at our memberships. If you want to join office hours, that's part of our developer membership. And it's where we do 6 office hours sessions every week and answer your bubble questions. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.